Welcome to the third video for Grammar with Clarity for Everyone. This video is going to teach you all about the two clauses called dependent and independent. Relative clauses will be taught in the next video. Today we're focusing on only dependent versus independent, and this is honestly one of my favorite lessons to teach with grammar because I feel like when students actually connect with this, they're like, wow, now a lot of things kind of make sense. It's one of those things in life, it's like a puzzle piece that when you put it in place, everything is clear. So I'm excited to be able to teach this to you today. I need you to have college ruled notebook paper, a dark red and a dark blue colored pencil, and of course a regular sharpened pencil. So go ahead and get your materials ready and we are ready to begin. The first thing you're going to do is identify that this is lesson number 3. That's what the 3 indicates. You're going to write clauses at the very top, and then I want you to write in large handwriting like we have been for the headings of these notes, dependent, and then versus independent. And notice the white space in between. So these two types of clauses, dependent versus independent. This is what we're going to be talking about today. All right, the first thing I want to talk to you about though is really what does it mean to be dependent? When we are dependent upon somebody, we rely on them for our survival. So who is dependent? Well, go ahead and draw an arrow right here. Who's dependent? Babies are dependent, right? They're dependent upon their parents. Babies and kids, they're also dependent upon their parents for survival, for everything that they need. They're dependent upon them for food, for shelter, for love, for personal interrelational connection, all of the things that we need to have to survive and grow. We are dependent upon somebody else until we hit a certain age. So babies and kids are dependent. All household pets are dependent. Wouldn't you agree? If you don't feed your dog dies. If you don't give your dog water, your dog dies. It's the same with any pet. Any household pet is 100% dependent upon its owner for survival. So then if we think about that, let's think about, well, then what does it mean to be independent? Well, if we're independent, we stand alone, we survive alone. We can if we need to, okay? So who is independent as far as survival is concerned? Parents are independent, right? Our parents, adults are. We'll do / adults. We're talking parents, I mean, kind of versus kids. Well, if we're talking about pets being dependent, really animals, then what type of animal would be independent? And you're probably thinking, well, wild animals are, and you are correct. Baby wild animals are not independent. They're dependent upon their parent. Not all of them, but some of them are dependent upon their parents. But for the most part, wild animals are independent for their survival. So what does this mean related to grammar? And why would I be talking about this? Well, because these two clauses are so incredibly important that you lock into your brain so that we can move forward and learn some other kind of trickier concepts that if I can get you to understand these in this kind of silly terms right here, you're going to remember, okay? And that's why this is an important concept for us. So when we think about grammar, okay, and we're talking about a dependent clause, we're not talking about a baby or a pet. We're talking about something that does not, notice the capitals, function. Notice how I'm going to go down below. Okay, this is a note-taking strategy. Do you see how I'm doing kind of columns going on here, right? Something versus something else. I'm using arrows, I'm using white space, I'm using capitals, I'm going to bold it. Bolding is good, okay? Does not function on its own. Okay, well, we're going to take a pause here and we're going to add some color. From this point forward, I want you to use dark red for anything that we're discussing that is related to dependent clauses. If it is a dependent clause, it's red. We will underline it in red. So The red is a very important color moving forward. Always make sure you know where your red is and that it's sharpened. So we're going to go over in good, nice, bold. We're going to bold this dependent, heavy, heavy, heavy red, okay? Dependent, and it does not, we're going to go over the word that we already bolded, not function on its own. Does this make it a bad clause? Does this make it something we don't care about? Absolutely not. In fact, we love dependent clauses. Why? Well, because dependent clauses do something really cool. They add really very interesting information to our sentences. So we're going to come down here now and we're going to draw an arrow. We're going to write a definition for a dependent clause. That definition is going to fit into a space right here because, of course, we're going to need to do the same thing for independent clause over here. So we're going to write right below our arrow that this is a group of words that add. Now notice how I'm stopping here and I'm coming over because I don't want to be going over into my white space, nor do I want to be going over into my independent clause information space. So it's important that I pay attention to where I'm at here. So it's a group of words that add information to a sentence. Period. No, no period, comma. Contains a subject and a predicate. This is an important concept. And a predicate. But, capital B-U-T, dot, 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 does not. Here we have that bolded not again, okay? Does not make a complete thought. If I'm moving too fast for you, you know what? You just remember that this is recorded and you can pause this video, okay? So a group of words that add information to a sentence contains a subject and a predicate, but it does not make a complete thought. And you might be thinking, wait just a second here. Weren't you just saying in lesson 1 that if we have a subject and a predicate, we have a complete thought? You are correct. However, when we have a dependent clause, something very interesting is happening. The reader is left wondering, what? Okay, so you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a minute. Dependent clauses are great though. We want them. We want to use them. So we're going to turn our paper over to the side. We're going to pick up our red again. And we're going to go ahead and put a nice red box around this. Really important bit of information here. Okay. And then we're going to write some hearts that we love these because these do something really great. These make our writing really interesting. They really do. So we're going to write that. We're going to come over here and we're going to write these make sentences interesting. These guys add that extra information. So we want them. Okay, we want to start using them. If you haven't comfortably been using dependent clauses in your writing, I want you to start using them not only in your writing, I want you to use them when you're texting, when you're emailing, when you're talking. I want you to start thinking dependent clauses, okay? So we're going to now shift over. We're going to, of course, have some more information about dependent clauses in just a minute. But first, we're going to shift over to the opposite end here, which is to talk about independent clauses. These ones that do stand alone, they do function alone, okay? So we're going to come down here. We're going to try to stay in line with our formatting, and we're going to say functions on its own. And then we're going to draw an arrow down. And we're going to write the alternative of this, which is that it is a group of words that add information to a sentence. Now at this point, so you see that this is exactly the same as over here, right? But here we have where we differ. And it's a complete sentence on its own. Exclamation. Okay, now we're going to pick up our dark blue, not light blue. Okay, for independent, we want to go all dark blue. We're going to add some color here. Oh, we need to back up. Actually, sorry, pick up red. We got does not function on its own. We did everything, but we forgot to go over this not in red. So, okay, normally the word not is like negative, right? Not in this case. In this case, it just means it doesn't work alone. Please don't make it stand alone. It needs its buddy, its independent clause to actually stand alone. But we love them. So here we're talking about independent clauses. We want to do our blue color coding. So we want to heavily bold independent with our dark blue. I don't know if you can hear my pencil scratches or not, but I'm pushing pretty heavily down in order to get that thick mark. You might notice that your colored pencils snap when you do that. Here's what to do about this. So when you sharpen your colored pencils, they don't like to be heavily pushed down. The tip will snap. So you can fix that by just running it on a piece of scrap paper and getting that tip off. And when you dull it just a little bit, then you can get that heavy line with a little bit of an edge, which is what I have. And the edge is important because when we want to go over letters and we don't want to make it a big blurry mess, we need a little bit of an edge. So I have a little bit of an edge there. And I want to go over is a complete sentence on its own because that's a really important aspect of independent clause. And when something is a really important aspect and we're taking notes on it, guys, we want to use stuff to make that jump out. We want to use color, bolding, symbols, shading, anything to make it jump out. Not only does that time that we put into it, when we're taking the notes, that extra time helps it connect in our brain a little bit stronger, but it also makes it much easier for us to go back and re-look at our notes and go, oh, yep. I remember writing that. I remember that. Yep. Right? A quick glance and you've got it. It's just instant access of that file of information in your brain. So that's why doing notes, using the white space, using the formatting, using the color, all these things, it's really quite helpful. And not just for grammar, for every subject. From this point in your life all the way through college, trust me. Okay. Now we have kind of broken down that dependent means it stands alone. It does not stand alone, excuse me, and it does not make a complete thought. That independent does. Gosh, I have really beat that one dead, haven't I? Now we're going to come down and we're going to do a couple of examples and we're going to color code. So the first one we're going to come down like 2 lines here. We're going to write this sentence. As soon as she finished her homework, comma, Jenny ran outside to enjoy the sunshine. Okay. Now, what we want to do is determine what part of this sentence stands all on its own. So we're going to read it and we're going to use the comma maybe to help us. These are not always separated by a comma, but if we do have a comma, we can see if maybe that's a helpful tool for us. As soon as she finished her homework, are you left wondering what happened as soon as she finished her homework? I am. Well, let's go ahead and underline that red because guess what? It does not make a complete thought. We are left wondering what, right? As soon as she finished her homework, we're going to underline that in red. We're going to draw a red circular arrow here. And then we're going to write, the reader is left wondering. We don't want our reader to be left wondering. Okay. And so how do we make that not happen? Well, we pair this up with its best friend, the independent clause. Jenny ran outside to enjoy the sunshine. Would you say that that is a complete sentence on its own? I would. So let's go ahead and underline that in dark blue because that means it is a dependent clause. Jenny ran outside to enjoy the sunshine. If we have that following this, hey, we've got a great sentence. Because what did this dependent clause do? It just added some very interesting information to our sentence, which we always want to aim for. All right, we're going to do another one now. This one's a little bit longer. So we're going to come down a few lines and then we're almost done with our notes, folks. So we're going to actually come down. I'm on this 1, 2, 3, fourth line down. John is a master chess player, comma. And he will be competing in the championship games, comma. Which are held twice a year. All right, period. John is a master chess player and he will be competing in the championship games, which are held twice a year. Huh. Okay, so let's see if we can color code what's going on here. John is a master chess player. Would you agree with me that that is a complete sentence? That is an independent clause. We're going to go ahead and underline that. We're going to skip right over the comma and the end. He will be competing in the championship games. That is also a complete and independent clause. Wait a second. You might be asking, why did you just skip over the comma and the end? Well, here's why I did it. And if you want, you can go ahead and go over your comma in red and your end in red. And we're going to do that just so that we identify that this is a coordinating conjunction. Coordinating conjunctions need to function with a comma if they're functioning by connecting two complete independent clauses. Okay, so that's what's happening here. So we discussed that a little bit in the last lesson. We want to skip right over the comma and the coordinating conjunction when we are determining if something is an independent clause or is a dependent clause. So do you see how nicely that works if we skip it? He will be competing in the championship games. If we skip it and we read that to ourselves, we can determine, yes, that is in fact a complete sentence, also known as an independent clause. All right, now we're going to look at the next part, which are held twice a year. Okay, this does not stand alone, so we're going to underline this in red, which are held twice a year. This is left, this does not stand alone, and the reader is left wondering. So we're going to draw an arrow down from this, and this we're going to write does not. Reader, whoops, is left wondering. Okay, and as you're going to discover with our next lesson, which clauses that start with dependent clauses that start with which are actually technically considered relative clauses. So this is technically a relative clause, which is part of the dependent clauses, but it still leaves the reader wondering, and we're like, what's going on? But isn't this an interesting sentence? And do you notice that we could just say John is a master chess player? Sure, we could. That would be a complete thought. We would get our information across. But when we add this other information, it's much stronger sentence. All right. So now the practice problem that I have pulled up for us is through 8th grade. It is AA.3. And I just pulled this up to show you an example type of practice problem that you will identify here. So this one says select the independent clause. So then what you would do is refer back to your notes if you can't remember the difference between dependent and independent. So then review what does independent mean and then read this. So we would read it out loud. While the venomous bite of a centipede is not typically life-threatening, you'd read that and you'd say, wait, what? If I read while the venomous bite of a centipede is not typically life-threatening, I'm left wondering what happens, what? Okay, so it's not super clear. So I know that can't be the independent clause. Let me read on. It can be exceptionally painful. Oh yes, that's definitely an independent clause. So it can be exceptionally painful. It has to be the independent clause here. So I would select that and I would hit submit. Okay, so we're at the end of this. You guys did a great job. I hope that you feel a little bit more comfortable with this concept of dependent clause versus independent clause. And if you're like, yeah, I just need to move forward to the next lesson because I'm getting this right now, go ahead and start the relative clause video so that you can just get through clauses. Phrases will be coming up after clauses and, well, actually, excuse me. After relative clause, I'm going to do a lesson talking about the difference between a phrase and a clause with a Venn diagram so that we can kind of break down the difference between the two terms. A lot of people are really like, what? I don't know. I mean, I know I've heard that, but I don't know what you're talking about with that. I don't know how to discern the difference. So I'll be talking about that. And then after that lesson, we'll move into learning about types of phrases. So if you feel like you want to kind of move forward, this would be a good opportunity to do that. The relative clause lesson will be fairly quick. All right, so for your IXL practice today, if you are in 7th grade, you're going to go to Z3. If you're in 8th grade, you're going to go to AA3, 9th grade X4, 10th grade X4, 11th grade U4, and 12th grade U6. And as always, we want to go with an aim of 10 correct. And since we don't have a range of numbers here, 10 correct, maybe we could think of that as our minimum. And maybe we could go to 15. That'd be really awesome. All right, you guys, thanks for tuning in. And I am happy that you are learning, and I can't wait for you to continue to grow through these lessons.